Good evening, everyone. It is 5 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I know that, we still have some kids who are eating, and you guys just eat up. You can probably even have seconds if your parents allow you. But we want to get started. We also have people joining us online, so we want to be able to continue forward with the presentation. So first, I just want to thank Grand Rapids Community Media Center, who's here doing the live streaming for us and recording so that people can watch this presentation later. I also want to thank, we also want to thank Grand Rapids Public School System and their parent university. This is the second year that we've been doing these presentations, and it's just a wonderful way to be able to connect to the community and also find out what the concerns are of parents in Grand Rapids Public School System. So we really appreciate being here. So my name is Regina, and I am the communications manager at Network 180. And my colleague here, Jose.
Yeah, my name is Jose Salinas. So I work for Network 180 as a community outreach specialist.
Exactly. So before we begin today, we're talking about how to have the conversation about mental health with your children if you feel like you're sensing that there might be some problems. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. One of the things we want to be clear is when we talk about mental health, we can have good mental health or poor mental health or somewhere in between. So Jose and I are not clinicians, and so we're not talking about mental illness per se. We aren't going to be giving any advice about medication or anything like that. What we can do is if you feel like you're in a situation where you need more help, we can help get you connected through Network 180. And we have resources over there and some information for you if you're curious anymore. And we also want to know if anybody here would like translation services. We have two translators from the Hispanic Center, and they have headsets. So if you would like translation, just let us know and we'll get you set up with a headset. So without further ado, we'll get started. So what we're going to cover this evening is first, we're going to talk about mental health, talking about that good or bad mental health and what to be looking for. We're going to also discuss why we talk about mental health. Why is it important that we have these conversations? We're also going to give information on how to prepare for a talk with your kids, how to have that conversation, some different activities that you can use for yourself or in your household to help everybody. And we also have some resources at the end, which I did print out, and they are on that table. So those will be available to you too. There's some, a couple of coloring books that can be downloaded or printed out, and some really good YouTube videos that are really helpful in kind of expanding this even farther out. So.
Yeah, we also hope to give you some tips too, and as you prepare to have those conversations. And the first question we want to start off with is, what comes to mind when you hear the word mental health? What comes to mind when you hear that? We have a hand up there over there. What comes to mind? What do you think about? You want me to bring you the microphone? No? You can come up here if you like. No? Okay.
Okay.
So something going up here, thoughts, thinking. Good job.
Okay.
So
What
yeah.
else?
What else?
Anybody and it doesn't have to be, like, there's no correct answer. When someone says, hey, let's talk about mental health, what comes to mind?
Taking care of your mind and brain.
Yeah.
Taking care of your mind and brain. Good.
Yes. What else? Anyone else? Yeah. So Justin.
Sometimes what we encounter is the negative parts. Like, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I don't, the stigma that surrounds mental health. I don't want people to look at me funny. Do some of those things come to mind when you're thinking about mental health? I see some nods.
Yeah, yeah.
Mental health definitely has a negative connotation to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think of mental health, I think of people struggling,
Yes.
depression, and stress, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yes. I'm glad that you brought those things up because we're definitely going to talk about what is mental health and how it can also be a good part and then also a not as good part of mental health. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Like Regina said, we're not talking about diagnosis. We're not clinicians. We don't diagnose and do any of that. So we'll just give you some basic information on what mental health is. And so mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and our social well-being. So it definitely involves a lot of how, and affects the way we think and feel and act. So those are the different factors, and it determines how we handle stress. So like when you're feeling really, really stressed and don't have the skills, good mental health skills, we might struggle a little bit more in handling, stress at some point when we don't have those factors that can really help us handle stress a lot better, because stress is normal, right? I mean, as adults, we got jobs, children to take care of, friends, social groups. So a lot of that determines how we feel emotional and psychological and socially, the way that we handle the stress. And also in relation to others, that social aspect and well-being, when we're feeling a little bit more stressed or frustrated, it can also impact our relationships with others. So it's good to, I thought I clicked that. No, it's still there. So in how we connect with other people. So it's important to consider those aspects of how you can have good mental health and then also not doing too good on some other sides. So also impacting the choices that we make. I think I want to say choices, not making healthy choices, but just choices in general. When we're feeling calm and doing well and feeling balanced, we can have that ability to make better choices, or choices that really have that positive impact in our lives. So it's important to consider those things. Any questions on this? Or any thoughts? Comes to mind? All right.
So as we were talking about, and as we've said, our mental health, it's much like our physical health. When we have a cold, we have to go and take care of ourselves. Maybe we lay in bed for a couple of days. Maybe we eat some chicken soup and watch really trashy television, right? And if that were to continue for a long time, like generally over 2 weeks, then we'd maybe think, maybe something else is going on here and we need to get some help, right? So when we talk about mental health, it's how are we feeling? Are we doing well? Are we kind of on top of the world? Are we happy? Did a bunch of really great things happen for us in our lives? Or are we just having difficulties? When it comes to kids in school, is school difficult? Are they, experiencing a subject matter that's really, really difficult for them? Are they having conflicts with friends? Are they losing friends because our, kids' social groups, especially when they start hitting adolescent age, they change like overnight. Like one day everybody's best friends and the next day they all can't stand each other and they've decided to be friends with someone else. So it's like like the image here on the screen, it's like a scale. And when you pile too many things up on one side, it can bring the way we feel and the way we experience our mental health down. So then we would consider ourselves as having poorer mental health, as opposed to if everything is going well and we're getting A's in school, or if we're parents, we just got a new job or we got a raise, that might bring up our mental health. So we don't want to encapsulate or box in the idea of mental health as something that you only deal with when it's bad. Because there are things that we can do, all of us, no matter how old we are, from toddler to high school to adult, there are things that all of us can do to help protect our mental health when we're feeling good, how we can kind of help ourselves when we're feeling down to get back up, and also to know then when do we have to get some help beyond what we can do for ourselves?
Yeah, so question for you is, what are some of those things that some of you do to help you in your mental health? Like, what are some of those things that you do to feel better and feel balanced and healthy? Someone in the back?
I'm going to come back here with a
there we go.
microphone so you can say it out loud. What do you do when you're feeling down?
Talk to someone.
Excellent.
That is awesome.
Count to 10.
Count to
Oh,
10.
excellent.
Okay.
Do what? Oh, okay. Excellent. That's a good one. Any other? Take a walk. That's an excellent one.
Yeah. Take a what? I didn't
Well,
hear that one.
do you all have anything? Any ideas? What do you do when you're feeling down? How do you make yourself feel better? Oh, watch TV is a good
Watch TV.
option.
Yes.
Excellent. Here, Joe, sorry, I'm the one that I said I wouldn't walk around and look at me. I'm running around with a microphone.
We need to share the microphone.
What about over here? Did you?
Anyone over here? What are some things that you do for your mental health? Exercise is also
is
good.
an excellent one.
Yeah. Definitely a good way to develop some of those feel-good chemicals. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Socialize. Have like a girls' night or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Good.
definitely.
Anybody else?
Read a book.
Read a book. Yep.
Okay.
So there's a lot of ways, right, and we can work towards benefiting our good mental health. So definitely, I like the idea of talking about those factors.
Yeah. So just, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's why we're doing these sessions. And so, one of the reasons for an awareness month is to help reduce stigma and increase knowledge. And so, oftentimes we separate what's happening up in our head from what's happening with the rest of our body. But you know what? I can't take this off and go set it somewhere else or tinker with it to try and get it to work. It's all connected. Our whole bodies are connected. So, this is just a really good example of how when we're talking about mental health, we are in a way talking about physical health because they are all connected. So, when we feel healthy in our bodies, we're well fed, everybody's having a delicious sub tonight, we've gotten a good amount of rest, we do have connections with friends and family and people we love, we feel supported, we have joy, and we maybe even have some goals to work on. So that's kind of when we're kind of having like a peak experience. Things are going really well for us. We feel pretty successful in our lives. And the same with kids. They are engaging in activities that they love. They're enjoying school. They're connecting with friends, and at the same time, they're getting the rest that they need, they're getting the support they need at home, and so they're also having that peak experience. And then, kind of in the middle of the road, like when you have a bruise or a cut, sometimes something happens and you feel really down. Sometimes you get some bad news and it knocks you out from under your feet for a couple of days. Like that grade that you got, that you studied really hard for that test maybe, or you practiced something and you were hoping you'd make the team and you didn't make the team, or you studied for that test and you thought you'd get an A and you ended up getting a D, and stuff like that. So those types of experiences might make us feel like, you know what, I just don't want to do my day today. I would rather throw the covers back over my head and stay today in bed. Or, I would like to avoid this day because it was really hard. And maybe that lasts for a couple of days. When we start getting toward crisis mode, like physically, something that is crisis mode would be if we were having, chest pains, like we were having a heart attack, or we got into a terrible accident, or we needed emergency surgery, like those physical things that are pretty serious and everybody around you is concerned about you and wants to be there for you. So that's, again, when we're talking about mental health crisis, when someone's, really, really needs help beyond like a hot bath or listening to music or spending a couple days, laying low and being quiet, that's when we're looking at things like thoughts of suicide, or when people are doing self-harm, doing things that are dangerous and risky, and they could, end up losing their lives doing it, or severe substance use. And again, we see this even in young people. We see those same things, kids who begin cutting because they don't know what to do with all the feelings that they have or the thoughts they have in their head. Psychosis can be one of the things that warrants a crisis. And again, there's help for all of these things. But one of the things that's important is if we take care of our whole well-being, and we do that consistently, the hope is that we don't ever end up in crisis, that we don't end up having a heart attack, or we don't end up in a place where we feel like we want to end our lives. And so that's, taking care of our mental health now can help us. It can also make it more clear when something's going wrong.
Yeah, most definitely. I think about what you said with the mind and the body, that we can put that apart. Thinking back to an experience of having so much stuff happening in that brain, and it happens to a lot of us, right? Where the body actually feels that impact of what's going on up here. If there's a lot of activity, it could really feel in that tightness and different things like that. And there's ways where we can, help to feel a little bit healthier and more stable. So talking about mental health with your kids, and what are some of the things, why do you think that it's important? I was supposed to do that after I asked the question, but the arrow went, so we're just going to go ahead and stay there. But just something that you believe it's important, even outside of this PowerPoint. What are some things that you do with your children and in relation to mental health and talking to them? What are some of the outcomes? Yeah. Go ahead.
No importa tan malo que está tu día, que tu mamá está aquí para apoyarte, tu día va a estar mejor si tú hablas conmigo. Porque si tú no hablas con tus hijos y no comunicas, y ellos se aíslan, eso se hace más grande.
So just translate that. It doesn't matter how hard your day can be as you talk to your kids, that can bring that relationship so that things do not become a lot bigger. So it doesn't increase the situation, right? And thank you for that. And it also helps reassure them that it's not their fault. The situation is not their fault, right? Mental health, life happens, sometimes challenges happen, and being able to handle it in a healthy way is good mental health, right? So having those skills to do, and having your caregiver offer those questions, that conversation and validation, it's important to reassure them that it's not their fault. And also important for the caregiver to help them or guide them find words to express their feelings and their emotions. Because and I'm not saying tell them how they feel, but how do you really feel? Like your kid, how do you really feel? Because they might express that in a total different way. So helping them, guide them and explore to identify that and finding the words to express it. And also, kids know, they're humans. They know when something is off. How many of you remember, when you were younger, it's like we know when something is wrong. Something is off up here in my body. What's going on? And then also, talking helps to cope. It's having somebody, I think someone earlier said, talking to someone. Yeah, so it helps. So if you talk to someone, that really helps us to cope with those situations. So it's good to talk to your kids about mental health and allowing them to express how they feel. So how do you get prepared? How do you get prepared for that conversation? And I think I'm just going to jump on to the very next slide and just talk about, the importance of checking in with yourself. As a caregiver, as a person that's taking care of your kids, it's important for us to also check our mental health. And how do we model that? How do you model that for your children, that it's okay to have a bad day and learn from that, to keep and learn ways to have good mental health? How do you stay stable and healthy in your mental health? So we model that for them to help them express their own experience. So not only do we keep ourselves healthy, but we're a model to show them how we can also overcome some of those challenges that we get throughout the days. And another thing that is, that it's important for us to do is to reflect how much we know of the topics. Like, it's incredibly, like, I admire your interest in being here, of the importance to hear about this type of topics, because if we don't know, it is important for us to get educated, find good information. I mean, Network 180 has been here for years providing community mental health in Kent County. And I'm glad that we're doing a lot of these different conversations, because when you don't know about mental health or a particular topic, it's important to find that help of someone who can give you the information that you need. Also, reflecting again on how you feel about your own mental health and your feelings about that situation that you may be dealing with one of your kids or someone that you're taking care of. And identifying those emotions and feelings. It's okay if it is a difficult time to identify that before you actually have that conversation with your kid. Does that make sense? Being able to check in with yourself. It's like, I'm getting ready to go talk to my daughter, and boy, I'm being very frustrated. and she did something that just totally didn't make sense, but she's struggling and she's crying. So I need to check in with myself, how I'm doing, because maybe I've been really busy all day, doing a lot of work, and just meeting all kinds of deadlines. So there's a lot happening up there. So I need to check in with myself before I go talk to my daughter and say, hey, what's going on, honey? Before I can really pay attention to her and be there for her. So creating that space is also important. So identifying what makes you feel that way about the situation. So I may be disappointed, or I may be afraid, or I may be feeling sad because my daughter is going through something. Right? So really checking in with ourselves is important.
Yeah, I can kind of dovetail in that. My youngest daughter just graduated from high school last spring, so I'm an empty nester now. But, when your kids are having challenges, sometimes you can feel so powerless, and so being able to check in and things are not going the way. Sometimes, especially with our kids, it can be so frustrating because it seems like the same things happen over and over and over again, and they just seem kind of deaf to the consequences and what's happening. And that's when I'm kind of looking out and judging how I want them to be, whereas when I took stock of myself and recognized how helpless I felt when one of my kids needed help, and that it wasn't their fault, they just didn't know what else to do. They were doing the best they could with what they had. And so then when I was able to recognize that that's what they were doing, then I was able also to be patient with myself too, and realizing I'm only doing the best I can with what I have too, and we have some gaps. We have some gaps that we need to fill between one another so that we can get on the same page. And so taking that time to really reflect is really important.
Yeah, so important. And by the way, if we did mention earlier, I just want to remind, this is our space, and we're here to share this space with you. Yes, we're providing information, but we want you to jump in if you have questions, if you have a comment that you want to say. We're sharing this space with you, and if you need a microphone, we'll walk it out to you. So
I think we actually even have an extra one over there. So.
We might have an extra one? Mm-hmm. Okay. So next slide?
Yeah. So one of the things, as you know, I was talking about, you know, when you realize, like, I don't know that I even have the tools to deal with this right now, what do I do? One of the most important things you can do is first create your own support system. So, you know, it's kind of like that old adage, you know, put your own oxygen mask on first. You've got to take care of yourself first before you can help your child. And so who are the people in your lives that you feel safe with, that you could talk to, that you could tell anything to without feeling judged, without getting a whole bunch of advice that you don't need, because there's always those people who know exactly what we're supposed to do, and had we just listened to them 6 months ago, things would be so much better, you know. But who are the safe people in your life, the people who are willing to listen, that can empathize, people who are willing to be patient with you while you figure it out, and people who can support you when you're feeling really down. You know, especially with kids, sometimes maybe you have a family member or a friend who's just willing to be with you while you're at home with your kids, just for an additional person that's, you know, kind of non-partisan in a way, to be there to help. You know, someone had said earlier that one of the ways they take care of themselves is to be social with their friends. You know, and so knowing who those people are, who are your kind of your lifelines? Are they family members? Are they friends? Are they coworkers? Are they from your faith community? Are they from, you know, one of your hobbies? So it's important to identify who those folks are in your life. So when you do need help, you have a place to go and people you can rely on for support and caring and occasionally good advice. And when it comes time to actually, you know, if you get into a situation where, you know, we've tried lots of things, we've tried rewards, we've tried consequences, we've tried talking, we've tried to open every avenue we possibly can. It's time that we need to do something, we need to sit down and have a formal conversation about this. Then who's going to be part of that conversation? You know, and that's going to be really reliant on how you experience your own child. You know, how well do you know them? Would they be overwhelmed if 3 people came to talk to them? Would it be better if it was just yourself? Or maybe there's another family member. Maybe they're more connected to a grandma or an aunt or a cousin, you know, who's older, who might be willing to have a conversation, try and open that door a little bit. So making that really sort of conscientious effort about who's going to be that person. Maybe you make an appointment, you know, with the school guidance counselor, and both of you sit down and have this conversation. So those are, you know, but you want to make sure that you have all the right people in the room. Again, kind of like your support system. You don't want a person in there who's going to judge what's happening, who's going to try and tell a child, well, just straighten up. You know, your brother doesn't act like this, you know, sort of thing. They don't need comparisons and they don't need judgment. It's a very vulnerable spot. And so being able to, again, surround them with safe people and the people who can actually help them with this part of their journey, because it is a journey. And it might be a short journey or it could be a longer journey, but you want people there who are really going to be good supports.
Very cool.
And be sensitive to the details. And again, you know your child, and you know, and when you decide to have this conversation, you're their advocate. You know, whomever those people are, you're their advocate. So sometimes we get into situations where we go to a physician or we go to a counselor's office or we go and we're being told what we have to do, or your child is being told what they have to do. And it's really important to be an advocate for your child, and you know them best. So when is the best time for them to have a conversation like this? Is it first thing in the morning? Are they a morning kid? Or would it be better to have it later in the afternoon? Where should they have that conversation? I know for me, one of my kids will open up to me if we go for a long drive, just a drive. And so, we were fortunate in that, that child was in sports where we had to take long drives sometimes, and those were the best experiences we ever had because we just had conversations And if you just hang with the conversation, you know, if she was a teenager, but then they open up. If you just stay with them and let them say, they'll open up. So, you know, knowing what the best location is in the atmosphere. You know, would it be better to have that conversation at home in the living room, or would it be better to go out to their favorite restaurant? You know, would they respond better that way? So just paying attention to all those details can be really important to be able to have a productive conversation. And then it might be on the next slide, but also that it's not one conversation. It's one that needs to continue over and over and over and over again. What this conversation, the first conversation, can do is to maybe, again, crack open that door so that you can continue to have that conversation over and over.
Yeah, I think my daughter will pick going out to a restaurant. She usually does that very well, actually. So it's like, but you know, it's what you said about that ongoing conversation. It's like it's not just going to happen one time. I mean, my daughter's 23 years old, and we're still having some of those conversations. So I think it's important to build that connection and model that, you know, that there is a space, a safe space for her and I to have that conversation, or for you and your loved one that you're caring for. So now that you're ready to have that conversation, what are you thinking it's the most important thing that you need to consider as you sit down to have this conversation with your child, or for the one you're caring for? What do you think is the most important thing to consider? There's no wrong answer, which is like, what's important for you? What is important for you? Yes?
For me, my reaction.
Your reaction. So checking in with yourself, right? Yeah.
One of them, I mean, I have 3 boys, one who's not here, but if they come to me and say something after school, and I'm like, you know, then it's kind of going to stop what they're going to say to me. And so it's like, put myself in check, and as much as I might want to react, it's just sitting, you know, and listening, because it could stop the conversation, or it could continue, and it leaves the room for the next time. So it's putting myself in check too, which is not always easy.
For sure. I'm so grateful that you shared open and honestly of, yes, we need to check ourselves, right? And see, how do we feel? What is my reaction? And then you said, listen. But I think your little one had her hand up too. So what do you think? Talk about
like what happened, or like how you feel about it.
So talk about how you feel about the situation? Yeah, definitely. Anyone
good.
else? Do you want to say it so everybody hears it? No? I was okay. I'll talk for you. Go ahead. So you're.
My first step with caring with my kids is listen like a friend, not just, you know, like I am and you A. And then when I hear everything, you know, mom is turning right here and sitting with you, and right now you know, we can discussing like parents and kids, you know, like what I am thinking about the situation like a friend. If it's something the school do or happen in the school, I go fixing because I am a parent. But if it's like a friend, okay, I get some advice. You know, like I know just you because I was before a little kid, you know, like you. But you know, the words change a lot.
So it's, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, which is the word empathy. So listening as a friend as you've been there, but also having that responsibility as a caregiver for your children. Yeah.
I go like a parent, you know, like.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you just want to be heard out. Like
You just want to be heard.
want to listen to you, and you don't really want them to go fix the problem. You just want someone to go listen to you.
Yeah.
Like you just like you had a bad day with school, right? Like one of my friends, her mom works in the district, and she was talking about how every time she like talks to her mom about like she's stressed with like a teacher or like a class, then her mom automatically wants to go talk and say something, and then she's like, "Mom, like I don't want you to do that. I just want to complain."
Yeah.
And so yeah, usually that's something that.
Just want to be heard. That's good. Thank you so much. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for all those comments and feedbacks and jumping in.
Yeah, and if I could just go off of a couple of the things that you said, you know, it's also important that your child knows that you're gonna keep their confidence. Like, you're not gonna go call, you know, get on the phone and tell all your friends about the conversation that you had. So, you know, making sure that you're creating that safe container for them to be able to express what's going on with them is really important, so that they don't feel like being vulnerable is dangerous. So.
Yeah, I think it's great that, you know, we had checking in with myself. You know, that's so important to be prepared, you know, modeling what mental health is, and also the listening. That's what we heard, listening and making sure that I'm being heard as I'm talking to you about a mental health problem. So listening and validation, so important, right? Your child might be feeling ashamed to talk about, you know, what is the worries, what's going on. There might be some shame. Earlier, we talked about mental health having that negative connotation, right? That we hear mental health and we think of it as negative, the stigma around it. So there might be some worried also with your kid, your child, of what may be happening, you know, at the schools or with their friends, their neighbors. So, you know, they may be worried. So listening and taking that time to give them the space to express and to explore what's happening with them. Also, yes.
I also feel though that as parents, to take it a tiny step further and to verbalize the validation. Oh, I know, it's always so hard when that happens at school or when a friend does that. I get that, I'm sorry. And to actually let them know what we're thinking in our head.
So validating, it's important. Listening, validating. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and normalizing those feelings, right? That's part of it. When we listen and we validate, it's like, yeah, I can relate. That, you know, that I have those type of feelings sometimes. I get really worried when my favorite Netflix channel, I can't play it because the internet just shut off. It's just like, you know, it's like kids, sometimes we worry about things that are little, but it's a real thing, right? So kind of like normalizing it. And also be curious about the way they see life, right? Their perspective, because their brain is developing, which not only are they more susceptible to that stress, but they're also learning and exploring. So being curious about their experiences, it's important. And the empathy part, we were talking about that empathetic listening and knowing that we were once kids, right? We had some of those experiences. And I remember my mom was a little bit different, kind of old school. It's like, get over it, or I'm gonna give you something to cry about. And it's like, it's a lot different now. I mean, my mom has grown up and she's a wonderful, wonderful, loving mother, and but it's different, right? Different education, different cultures, and that's why I think, you know, for us, it's important to not only bring the experience that we have in working in a mental health field, but also bringing the culture in aspect of, like, we see it differently, but it's the same. Mental health, it's across cultures. So being empathetic is important, and again, listen to how they feel. And if there's any practice that we need to keep in mind, whether for us that we work in the field or for you as a caregiver or anyone, you know, as we socialize, and is that that ability to listen, right? And there's a lot of good trainings out there that can help you kind of learn some skills and how to listen a little bit more. You know, I'll give you a quick one on transformative listening, and it involves a Chinese symbol called ting, and they use it a lot in different settings, but the symbol starts with a part over on the left of that symbol. It stands for honor. So treating that person as someone that is highly important. And then it moves on to the ears, the symbol above that, and then it moves over to the right and you have the eyes. And then you have a line that goes across that stands for number 10. So being completely immersed and paying attention to what's happening. That person is important. I'm hearing you, but I'm also watching for verbal signs. I'm connecting with you. I'm paying attention with my mind. And then it jumps down to the heart, that a lot of times when we're gonna support someone, especially our children, there is that heart connection where we're gonna be also having some feelings and some emotions. So there's another line that crosses that stands for one. So that heart-to-heart connection. So it's more than just hearing. It's like I need to make sure that I'm paying full attention, and that I'm watching what's going on, and that I'm also bringing my authentic self and my heart in with this because I care, because you're important to me.
So this is almost kind of a review because we've talked a lot about this, but again, and it depends on what's going on. If you're, oftentimes the situations that are occurring are situational. Maybe your child got their heart broken because a friend rejected them, or someone, a girlfriend or boyfriend rejected them. Maybe they're being bullied, or maybe they truly are experiencing, and especially adolescents, there's a whole bunch of hormonal stuff going on, and they don't know whether they're coming in or going half the time, and everything feels really strange. Like the way they perceive things, the way they feel about things, all feels kind of jumbled. And so, just always reassuring our youth that it's not their fault, that whatever's happening, it's not their fault. Again, being that safe, supportive person in their lives, that they know they can come to you and tell you anything, and you're not going to condemn them or judge them or make them feel bad for having the experience. And I already said that, emphasize the family strengths, letting them know that no matter what, they will continue to be loved. No matter what happened, no matter what they're experiencing, no matter what the next steps might be, if it is going, and getting help, or if it's going to see a counselor, something like that, they are going to be cared for, and you can help them create their own support system. Just like you had to define who are the safe people that I can talk to in my life, help them identify who the safe people are in their life to create their own support system. And remind them, again, the statistic is 1 in 4 people experience a mental health issue in their lifetime. So 1 in 4, that's 25% of people. So it's not unusual, it's not uncommon. And nobody's, condemned forever for, experiencing a mental health condition. There are lots that can be done. It might be temporary. It might be something that they have to learn how to navigate for a long time, but there's always help available, and they're definitely not alone. So those are important.
You said definitely not alone. So what happens, I want to go back, if you don't mind, to the listening part. What happens when you are listened to and validated? What is your experience with that? Do you feel important? Do you feel like you matter? Right? So I think, what's that? You want to? They support you. Yes. You feel supported. Yes. Yeah. So you don't feel alone. You feel supported. So I wanted to emphasize that little bit with the listening part, because there is something that is happening as we are being listened to and validated that is shifting something within us. So as you listen to your kids, or as we listen, because I'm a parent too, as we listen and validate our kids, it's like that really, there's that transformation happen within them, and they feel not alone and important.
So we had talked about this before. It really is when you are listening, and especially if your child is, expressing something that makes them feel really, really, really vulnerable. It's really important to be able to relate. And sometimes we have to dig into our own pasts to be able to relate. So, like a couple examples are here, if you have a child who's feeling really anxious or having a panic attack, we can probably all think of a time when we felt the same way. When my, teacher made me stand in front of the class and recite a poem that I wasn't quite ready, didn't have quite memorized, it caused a panic attack. And for me personally, I blotch. So then it looks like I'm on fire with these gigantic red spots all over my face, but having, and again, that can be part of the earlier reflection part, is having those examples from your own life, because then you know what? It helps build trust. My caregiver, my parent isn't looking at me like I have a purple face. They understand because they had experiences like mine. Being able to relate something like, I remember, when I had my first breakup and, I slept for 14 hours and then I ate a pint of ice cream and I watched Netflix for another 14 hours, and that's how I had to deal with it. What are the things that make you feel, would help you feel comforted or nurtured during this time? Do you want a pint of ice cream? Do you want me to run you a hot bath? Do you want me to find a really terrible show on Netflix that you can binge watch? Those types of things. So it's important that we are willing to open up about our own experiences.
The hot bath definitely is a really good one. I have neighbors that make fun of me because they can't see me sitting in a tub full of bubbles. It's like if it's wrong for a man or someone that identifies as male to sit in a bath full of bubbles. But it's incredible because there's a lot of different ways that we can take care of ourselves that would really help us deal with some of those things. I want to read the next one that you wrote here, and it says, I was depressed for a while when I was 13. All my friends got new friends, and I felt alone and sad. I didn't want to get up in the morning, and I didn't want to go to school either. I also understand why grandma made me get up and go. So important in going to school, but also the importance of knowing what is the impact, especially with depression and feeling like, wow, I just can't get up. I don't want to move. All I want to do is sit and watch TV and eat a pint of ice cream. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's so having that understanding, yes, I understand how you feel, and also the importance of school. But when we know and when we reflect, what do we know about the topic? And if we don't know, well, let's find out. There's people you can talk to, especially in school, and I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit, like counselors, teachers. I mean, there's people that you can reach out to learn more about a topic. Oh, this is mine too. Know your children. So the difference between a school-age children and teenagers, right? So when we talk to a small child, it's too much information would probably really make them feel overwhelmed. So we need to be careful how much information we share, but talking to a child, it's important. And again, back to believing that it's their fault. Even if it was a family member that got ill, believing that the child can believe that it is their fault. And reassure them that they're loved through that process, that they're safe, and that it's okay, that they're cared for, that this is normal, is not their fault. So for an older child, obviously you can talk a little bit more about different, more complex conversations and sharing more information at their level, but also understanding that they're also developing a view about themselves. So it might be hard for them to share some of the things that they're dealing with mental health with their peers. So there may be a little bit of that fear or shame of being, labeled or bullied or something like that. So being able to talk to them and prepare them for a conversation can also be pretty helpful. The feeling anxious and, by you talking with your child can really help them in understanding how to have those conversations moving forward. So how can we prepare them for questions? It's like, how can you prepare your child how can you be prepared for those questions? Again, checking in with yourself that they're gonna ask something, they're gonna ask you questions that you may not know. Do you have to know everything? Is it okay for us to admit that I don't know, but you know what? I can be committed to finding out with you what we can do about the situation. We don't have to have all the answers or make up an answer. So what would the impact be by us saying, I don't know the answer, but I will help you find the answer. And then following through with it. So the building that validation and that strength and support can go a long way, especially when we have that follow through with that. So some things that you may say, there's a number of things that you may say to your child throughout the day on a regular basis. How you're feeling today. But what are some, I'm curious to know, what are ways that you check in with your kid? What are some ways that you check in on a regular basis with them? Go ahead.
For me, I found if I ask both my boys, how was your day? I get the, it's fine, it was good.
Yeah.
What'd you have for lunch? The basics. My oldest is in 3rd grade, and one thing I have found with him is I ask him every day, how are you kind to somebody else? And he's able to either tell me something, or some days he'll say, well, I didn't have the chance today. So he can understand, not every day you are going to be kind to someone, but you're aware that these are something that I'm looking at. I'm a parent who's not asking, how did you do on the test? It's how are you kind to someone? That to me is way more important with all the testing going on right now too, is I already know they're stressed. It's a lot. How are you kind to someone? It kind of takes that pressure off because the pressure's there already, and just kind of giving them a different.
So checking in with them and also in the way they treat others. And it's good to understand that with all the pressures they also have, which we may think, you don't have to work, your only responsibility is going to school. That's a lot of responsibility. Learning and keeping up with homework and being able to have, good grades and different things like that. So I like that, recognizing that, wow, you were very busy, so you didn't even think about being kind to anybody. You were focused on your own. So yeah, so very important. And oh, yes.
So, we do high-low. So what was your high of the day, and what was your low of the day?
What was your-
Something great that happened, and something that, wasn't your favorite.
Yeah.
And that, sometimes leads to really good conversations, and sometimes it's just something simple, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
Yep. And then at
Yep.
the end, I always share as well, so that they, so it's like a family participation thing.
That's
Funny,
good.
we used to always do that
Yeah.
too. I'd say, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? We'd talk about it. And the best thing was when they got older and they said, well, what about your day? What was the best part of your day? And I'm like, all right, it stuck. Something stuck there.
That is, yeah, definitely. I love those highlights of what was the best part of your trip and what was something you really didn't like. It's definitely an important piece. Yeah, so, and being available to help, right? Asking your children how to help. So simple questions. I'm sure you have your own ways of checking in with your children, but it's important to throughout the day, checking in with them. Like my daughter, she's 23 again, and I just send her a text. A lot of times it's just texting, and it's how you doing? Check in with me. How you feeling emotionally? Check in with her, and I'm like, I'm doing really good, Dad, right now. I'm doing really good. So we have those conversations openly, and to be able to stay connected and be available for that support when she needs it. Yeah.
Actually, your technology point was a good one, because one of the mistakes I made as a parent when my kids were young was I didn't want them to text me. I'm like, don't have a conversation with me through text. Come and talk to me, or call me on the phone.
Yeah.
That's what they're for. That's why you have a phone. But it took me a bit to actually realize, I'm trying to cut off a communication channel that my children are expressing as a one that's comfortable to them. To be able to text me from their bedroom to say, I'm really angry with you, was much better for them, and open the conversation rather than demanding that they come down and talk to me. You talk to me and you look at me in the eye. It's well, no, it allowed us to have the conversation, and then later we could be face to face and do our apologies exchanges, or exchange some hugs and put it behind, and move forward from it. And we like to keep our rules, and structure is very, very important to children, but it's also important to recognize what are the ways I can connect with my child, and I don't want to cut any of those off.
Yeah, I'm glad we brought that back up again with that whole communication, because it also took me a while to understand that, yeah, a lot of people like to communicate via text. Some people may say, why is he calling all the time? It's like, don't you know we text now? Go ahead.
I love the conversation, physical conversation with my kid because I can read the body. And see, if he's like me, if he told me the truth, if he's afraid, if he don't want to continue to talk to me, and I say something is going on here, and I go in deep, but it's just that have the conversation and keep eye contact, it's a very part of the day for me.
Because you can better listen too. You're there, you're fully immersed. We talked about transformative listener earlier, but I think in this conversation is to identify or recognize that we all communicate in a different way, but not only that the process is different for all of us. And if we're having a bad day, the process is different.
So here are just some quick tips. When you're having a conversation with your child, a really, really important, substantive one when you're, tackling maybe a difficult issue, is to not talk at them. Let them lead the conversation. Be willing to take some pauses and maybe just be quiet and let things sort of settle and see where they take you next. Again, we've talked a number of times about the importance of a support system, but both for the caregiver and the child, it's important to have that established support system so that everybody feels safe in the situation. Be able to try and come up with open-ended questions, like you all gave examples about checking with your child for their day, like what was the best part of your day, what was the worst part of your day, doing something that actually solicits a response, and continue the conversation. It's like wearing down a path. The earlier we start having that conversation with our kids, we're wearing down the path. So when it comes time for the really difficult, hard stuff, we already know what steps to take to get there. We know exactly, we know how to connect to our child. It's never too late. We can always start. It might have to start small, but we can continue with that conversation. And then we're gonna, because it's already 6, we're gonna just jump to, we'll skip the toolkit for right now. There are resources over on the table. But we do want to say, if ever you are in a situation with your child and you feel like you need more help than what you're able to tackle at home through conversations and support, and you want to reach out for help, Network 180 is one of the places you can call. So we have some magnets and some information over there. But our crisis services are available 24/7, and they're available for children as well as adults. So if you have a child who's really dysregulated and having a difficult time, they can come directly to our access center on Fuller Street, or you can also utilize our mobile crisis service. And mobile crisis will send clinicians directly to wherever you and your child are to help them. So, but we just want to let you know that resource is available. And there's all our contact information, but it's also on that table. We have magnets and we have rack cards that you can take and have as a resource, or to hand out to someone else. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
And of course, if you have any questions, we'll definitely take them, but we realize time flew and it's 1 minute to 6, so.
So we are going to stick around. So if you have any more questions, we can definitely spend some time with you. And we
have 2 colleagues here,
yes.
Alexis and Kylie, who are also willing to take questions. They work at Network 180. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.